Welcome to Midnight Echoes. Here, I share the real stories from Reddit that keep the night awake. The eerie moments people swear actually happened, the ones no one can explain, and the memories that still haunt them years later. These aren't polished scripts or made-up tales, just raw, strange, unforgettable experiences from real people. If you love true scares, late-night mysteries, and stories that make you double-check your doors, you're in the right place. Settle in, turn down the lights, and let's begin. In this video, we're exploring some of the scariest real encounters people have ever shared on Reddit. Moments that left them frozen, confused, and completely terrified. These aren't urban legends. They're experiences that actually happened and still haunt the people who lived through them. So let's begin. Our first post is shared by you/buyer0100, and it was posted 7 years ago. Back in the early 90s, I worked as a night auditor for a small motel in Prospect Heights, Illinois. I was a young mother and worked nights while my husband worked days. Occasionally, my husband would stop by and check on me. It was a brutal schedule, and I truly don't know how I made it on only a couple hours of sleep each day. But I digress. My job was to perform a daily audit on the rooms and money. Also, I would check people in and out of the hotel. The hours were midnight to 8 in the morning. One night, I had finished my audit and was watching a scary movie on the little TV they had behind the front desk. It was winter and very cold. A man came up to the door and he was wearing a ski mask. For a second, I thought it was my husband, so I kind of smiled. He came up to the front desk and I asked if I could help him. He asked me why I had smiled at him. Well, I knew right then I was in trouble. He waved a big knife at me and told me to turn around. I felt the most fear then. I felt like I was going to die. He hopped over the front desk and cut one of the phone lines and took the money. I had my coat and purse back there, and he took those as well. As he left, he said, "I have your purse. I know where you live now." I stayed hunched in the corner behind the front desk as he left. Then I realized he had only cut the handset to one phone and the main line on another, so I took the handset from one phone and attached it to another where he had not cut the main line. I dialed 911 and got an operator on the line. Just as I was about to talk, the guy came back. Apparently he had dropped his knife behind the desk. I saw it on the floor as he came around. I picked it up. In my mind, I'm thinking, can I stab him? We stood there kind of facing each other. Me in my uniform and this big guy in a thick ski jacket. He demanded I give him the knife. I truly thought if I tried to stab him, I would lose and he would kill me. I gave him the knife. He took the knife and hit me over the head with the handle of the knife a couple of times and then left. The police soon came and I recounted my story. As far as I know, he was never caught. The place I worked for let me have a day off, but when I needed more, I had head injuries. They fired me. It turns out they had been robbed a few times before, but had never put in security. I did take them to court for lost wages, and I won. About a year later, maybe less, I saw on the news that a night auditor/clerk at the same hotel had been kidnapped from the motel, raped, stabbed, and left for dead. They caught that guy, and he is now in prison. I am literally shaking as I type this. It's been so long, but I rarely talk about this, or I just laugh it off like it was no big thing. Obviously, it still affects me greatly. Scariest night of my life. The hotel, when I worked there, was an Econo Lodge, but they apparently changed the name soon after I left to Forest Lodge. So, When the story about the kidnapped clerk came on the news, I didn't immediately realize it was the same motel until they showed a photo of the motel. Then I knew, and it scared the crap out of me. Damn, that's terrifying. The fact that he even came back for the knife gave me actual chills. Honestly, that's one of the scariest night shift stories I've ever heard. Our next story was shared about 7 years ago, and it starts with something no one wants to see at 2 a.m. a hallway covered in fresh blood. Me and my boyfriend came back at like 2 a.m. from a night out. We were both quite drunk and stumbled into the hallway to the elevator when we see drops of something on the floor. It definitely was blood, fresh and wet. The elevator button and door were covered in bloody handprints as well. My boyfriend called the elevator, pushing me aside, not knowing what would be in it. Luckily, nothing except for a puddle of blood. The elevator came from the 5th floor, so we went investigating. The trail of blood ended at a door with huge hand smears of blood on the door. It took all our courage to ring. Not the nicest place to live, robbery. But I am so glad we did. An elderly man opened the door. He looked like straight out of a horror movie, covered in blood from head to toe. His gray sweater was red. His hair was wet. His shoes were filled with blood. We immediately sobered up. I called an ambulance, which arrived in 2 minutes. My boyfriend went inside the flat, helping the man sit down. There was so much blood, I have never seen that in my life. We didn't know what happened to him until we met him yesterday properly for the first time. Recognized my boyfriend's glasses. He was drunk, wanted to ride his bike home, crashed somehow, and got a huge cut on his head. He takes heart medicine, which thins his blood. That's why he lost so much. If we wouldn't have rung the doorbell, he would have bled to death. He actually gifted us money and a super expensive bottle of champagne for something completely self-explanatory. That's insane, seeing blood all over the elevator and the hallway like that. I would have been terrified. And that man, covered head to toe, that's straight out of a horror movie. It's crazy to think you basically saved his life just by ringing the doorbell. Our next story takes us far from the mainland, all the way to Hawaii, where local legends and terrifying encounters are part of everyday life. And the person who shared this one knows those myths a little too well. I'm Cherokee, so technically Native American speaker. Very technical. However, that has nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about. That was just obligatory. Maybe it's not appropriate, but maybe it is for this Reddit question. I don't know for sure. I'm Hawaiian, living on the island of Kauai. I've met people on here who've said Hawaiians are Native American because America controls Hawaii. Sure, buddy. Anyway, there's a lot of supernatural and myth here in Hawaii that I thought I might share a bit of. At least the most prevalent kind that I've heard of. Night marchers. Ghostly ancient Hawaiian warriors. You'll hear drums and see torches when they're near. You can't look at them, and you should lie on the ground in respect. They'll kill you otherwise. You still can die even if you follow the recommendations. You're most likely to live if you're of Hawaiian descent. If a ghost warrior is a relative, he can call upon the night marchers to spare a descendant's life and/or show absolute respect. Mermaid of Wailua River. She's very much like a siren of sorts. Wailua River is the biggest, in terms of width, on Kauai. She swims in that river and does what one would expect a siren to do. White man of Waimea Canyon. Basically a small, powder white creature that, at night, stalks people. The only story I've heard of it involved the creature jumping on a guy's back and attacking him. Some sort of night creature I forgot the name of. I think it was a sort of one-eyed beast, but I'm not sure. Mythology story of it involved a hunter who stayed out too late, so he decided to camp. He sets up a fire and sees the creature across from him. The monster just watches him from across the campfire. This particular monster doesn't like light. The hunter had to sit there and keep the flame lit until morning. When the sun began to rise, the monster left, general ghosts of people that haunt heiaus and grave sites. Heiaus are sacred ancient Hawaiian lands that people cannot tread upon. This is a real rule here. Legends ranging from bad luck, being haunted, and more can happen if one treads on sacred land, especially without respect and Hawaiian descent. My uncle once parked by a river and a hotel with a courtyard that was built upon an ancient gravesite. On that courtyard was a tree. My uncle said he saw people in that tree staring back at him. Anyway, those are just stories at the top of my head. There is a ton of Hawaiian mythology, and I'm glad I was able to share some of that, even if this wasn't exactly a Native American story. All right, our next story is wild. This one was shared about 7 years ago, and it starts with something we all know too well, just chilling alone in your room, thinking everything is normal, until you hear something that makes your whole body freeze. I was up in my third-floor bedroom having just had a spliff chilling to music with my headphones on when I started to hear weird noises. Naturally, I just thought it was because I was stoned, but it was weird enough for me to take my headphones off. I listened for a bit, and coming from downstairs was a creepy voice I didn't recognize, mixed in with John's, my housemate's, voice. But he sounded like he was in pain. I was like, WTF. So I started walking slowly down my stairs and then looked into his room and saw John on his floor, holding his eyes in pain with a big dude in a hoodie shouting at him and then grabbing things off the shelves. The next thing I knew, autopilot had kicked in and I ran towards the room, and the hooded dude turned, ran out the door when I smashed into him, making us both go tumbling down the staircase, trying to exchange punches on the way down. We scuffled a bit in the hallway until he eventually ran out the door. It transpired that John, who at that time was on crutches, was hobbling home and went to open our front door when the hooded dude came up behind him and pepper sprayed him in his face, blinding him. He then took him up to his bedroom to rob him and his stuff. Poor guy had to have iPads on for the next 2 days. Anyway, it was all pretty fucked up, but John was okay in the end, and honestly, I was so stoned, it didn't really feel like it was happening at the time. It was like a bad trip. All moved out 2 weeks later, was Brixton in London. Our next story comes from someone who grew up in a strange old blue house. And one night, they saw something walking down the hallway. Something that wasn't their dad, and wasn't human. When I was a kid, my family lived in a blue house that was oddly shaped. One year, the house got completed, gutted, and nearly destroyed by a flood, and they had to knock down a wall between the living room and kitchen. So after the flood, you could see all the way down the hall to my parents' bedroom door. This house is strange, for lack of a better term. I was a terrible sleeper as a kid and would routinely wake up and just go into the living room and watch cartoons on low volume if I couldn't go back to sleep. One morning, I'm out in the living room, sitting across the chair with my feet up on a window. Don't ask me why. I was a stupid 8 or 9-year-old. From where the chair was, I could see just over the kitchen counter down that hall to my parents' room. A movement caught my eye. I looked up and saw the shadowy outline of a man walking towards me, kind of near to my parents' door. Thinking it was my dad, I said something like, "Hey Dad, sorry if the TV was too loud." Dad is a notoriously light sleeper and would wake up from anything. Except there was no response. Within seconds, my foot ends up going through the window. Again, not sure if this is related or I was a dumb kid, likely the latter, and I scream, and my parents actually wake up to figure out what's going on at 4:30 in the morning. At this point, I'm preoccupied, but realize much later that I definitely saw the outline of a man. But there was no way it was my dad, because A, he came bounding out of their bedroom after my scream, and B, I realized the shoulders of that outline were much higher than what my dad's would have been. Fast forward to a few years ago, we've moved far away from the blue house, and my mom and I are hanging out and catching up. For some reason, the blue house comes up, and I tell Mom that the place still gave me creeps, and weird stuff happened there when I was a kid. Mom's response? "Oh, you must have saw the shadow man too." First picture. The picture from the front has the front door and my room's window. That right side was the second hallway that had my room on one end and my sister's room on the other with a bathroom between. Second picture. The side picture, you can see how the house goes back. The very back was my parents' room. I put my foot through the middle of the 3 windows on the second picture. 15 years in an Arizona prison, and the inmates weren't scared of gangs or fights. They were terrified of something else, something that moved like a man but wasn't one. Here's another chilling true story shared on Reddit. I was in prison for 15 years. There was a Skinwalker in there with us. A little background first. I was serving a 15-year sentence in a penitentiary in southern Arizona. What I was in there for isn't important. During my stay there were countless things that happened that no one could explain, and even more that no one wanted to know more about. It all started with a prison legend. Supposedly, years ago, something awful and unexplainable happened in the prison. Every morning we'd be woken up and expected to stand near the front of our cells while guards visually confirmed we were present and accounted for. Apparently, about a year before I got sent there, the most brutal and unexplainable thing happened during one of these routines. A man who had a cell to himself looked very off during this check. When a guard pulled over another guard to help him check it out, they found it wasn't actually the prisoner they were expecting at all. It was a totally different man. This man was wearing the skin of the other man over him. Loosely fitting, draped over him, apparently looked like a real monster. The scariest things were, though, was the guy wearing the skin was not an inmate. They had no idea how he even got into prison, let alone a cell. What's worse is that they couldn't even figure out who the hell he was. He wasn't documented anywhere. And what's worse than that, they never even found the body of the man of the skin he was wearing. Pretty grisly stuff, I know, and I realize that's not the go-to definition of a skinwalker, but that's what the prison called him, the Skinwalker. Didn't help that the guy never talked, apparently. Anyway, that's what started the whole Skinwalker superstition around the yard. Apparently, the guy got shipped to a different spot about a month after it happened, and just about everyone in Gen Pop felt all the better for it. I heard about the story on the second day of my stay. Hell of a story to hear to place in your home for the foreseeable future. Now on to the real shit, though. Sure, that guy was the Skinwalker, but all he did in the long run was get an old lifer Navajo inmate to tell everyone about actual skinwalkers. It seemed like a lot of the prison culture actually revolved around them. Now apparently, skinwalkers are tricky to point out on the spot, but if you manage to survive around one for more than a minute or two, almost everyone can tell the mannerisms are all off. They can mimic human speech but not replicate it. They twitch manically. They have an unnatural gait while walking, but apparently they got better with experience. The old Navajo guy, his name was Carl, said that he was sure there was an actual one among the prisoners, slowly picking us off over the years. He called it the Grandmaster Skinwalker at one point. Apparently, he thought it had human mannerisms down so well that you might not even be able to tell if it was your cellmate for a day or two. It had to be good, he posited one night. He would expect a skinwalker to jump at any opportunity for a kill. But this one realized it had a revolving door of people to kill coming to it, and masterfully bided its time, as Carl thought, for years. A lot of guys found humor in it. A lot more were really on edge about it. Every once in a while in prison, people snap. Sometimes you'll find your cellmate swinging in front of your bunk, strung up around the neck by his pant leg. Sometimes you just can't take it anymore. But in our yard, people tended to snap in a very special way. It wouldn't be an outburst at dinner or a silent suicide in the night. Guys would just stop talking, hunch over and shuffle around. Any friendships they had would be mostly out the window. They would turn into a loner during rec time. They would let their hair hang in front if their face. No one liked to talk about it. Like, if they did, it would happen to them next. I felt the same way. I didn't know if it was a skinwalker or just people going crazy, but I didn't want to find out. It wasn't clockwork or anything, but every time someone snapped in this way, it wasn't more than a couple weeks before they were shipped off or transferred to God knows where without anyone else knowing beforehand. Then there was the nighttime occurrences. Short, loud bursts of sound echoed through my cell block during all hours of the night on a regular basis. It sounded like a mix between a pig's dying squeals and nails on a chalkboard. Just another thing no one liked to talk about. Even scarier were the shadows and footsteps. The block was dimly illuminated in the night by a few lights hanging from the ceiling outside the cells. I myself saw shadows flit across my walls on a regular occasion when there were definitely no guards near my cell. One time near the end of my sentence, I woke up, looked at my back wall, and found a perfect silhouette of a person standing there. But when I looked, my bunkmate was asleep, and no one was outside my cell. And the footsteps. Everyone hated the fucking footsteps. They were the scariest part. In the night, sometimes, more rarely than the shadows, you would hear ungodly, fast footsteps. They sounded like wet feet slapping on tile floor. Whatever caused them would fly from one end of the block to the other in a dead sprint. Whatever it was inhumanely fast. If you happened to be awake before it started, by the time you heard the footsteps on one side of your cell and whipped your head around to see the thing run by, it sounded like it was 3 cells past you. Everyone hated the footsteps. I agreed. I thought they were the worst. I was released from that place about a month ago, and I have more stories than I can count. I swear it was nearly my turn. About a week before I was discharged, my cellmate and a good friend of mine snapped in the same kind of way. I didn't sleep for an entire week. Well, I did sleep, of course, but never for more than a few minutes at a time. Never turned my back on the guy. The scariest thing? I woke up one night to him somehow snaking his body through the bars of our cell. For reference, I couldn't get anything past my shoulder through them. The worst part, though, he was coming back into our cell. On the day of my release, I didn't say a word to him, just left. He seemed fine with it, so was I. I had made it through 15 years of prison fights, gang disputes, and for all I know, skinwalker abductions. I left through the front gates, a free man. As I walked along the fence for the rec yard, I spotted my cellmate standing off on his own, like he had for the last week or so. I shook my head, not even really sure if it was him anymore. I took one last look over the yard, this time from the other side of the fence. I wish I hadn't. There, standing off on his own, on the other side of the yard, was Carl, slouched over, eyeing the other inmates and twitching manically. If that's real, then we don't even know what else was in there with them. That wasn't a prison story, that was a nightmare someone survived. Our next story is another one of those terrifying real Reddit cases, the kind you wish wasn't true. 2 kids sneaked out at night and someone followed them all the way home. I was at a sleepover at my friend's place. We decided to sneak out and wander around aimlessly. We stopped at our school, which had a small patch of trees on the grounds where the older kids hung out during lunch. There was rumors of a great Playboy collection there, hence our visit. While there, my friend stepped off to the side to have a pee. A few seconds later, he comes rushing back and says, "Run." I didn't know what his deal was, but as a kid in the forest with only the light of the moon, I figured asking questions was a secondary option to being left alone there. We ran until we couldn't run anymore. Finally, my friend explained that there was some weirdo looking at him go pee. He said that he believed the guy was jerking off. Being kids with a history of pranks, I thought he was fucking with me. Then I looked back and saw the guy a long ways back, but moving in our direction. We kept running towards my friend's place, and he kept following. When we got back, we thought we lost him. We snuck back inside and turned off all of the lights in the basement. We laid there silently and terrified. About 10 minutes later, we see something move by the window. We knew someone was out there. We stayed completely still and quiet. A minute later, we hear a noise coming from a room in the basement. We both lost it and started yelling, "Dad," for my friend's dad. He came running down the stairs, and we were yelling someone's in that room. His dad flung open the door, and the window was open, and there were fresh marks on the wall from someone climbing in or out. For some reason, he didn't call the police. He decided to stay downstairs with us for the night. I didn't really sleep, and in the morning, my friend's dad made me walk home with him. A few blocks away, and there were a bunch of police. As we walked by, one of the cops stopped us and asked if we saw anything suspicious last night. We told him the story, which kicked off further questioning. It turns out that a kid went missing from his room right around the same time that we got chased home. They found the guy a few days later, dead from suicide. They never found the boy he abducted. We had a lot of trouble with that. My friend's dad felt guilty for not calling the police. He became addicted to sleeping pills. My friend was traumatized with just how close he came to being grabbed in the forest. He turned to drugs really young and eventually killed himself. I went through therapy for a while and still have occasional night terrors from that night, even though it happened almost 30 years ago. Edit. Wow, this blew up. Thanks for the kind words, helpful PMs, and the gold and silver. Go figure it's on a throwaway account. I had far too many comments and questions, so I will try to address them here. First of all, I have already posted my story on here a couple of years ago. At the time, I was approached to sell the rights to it. I was interested in doing so because I like money. As a result, I spoke to my family and my friend's brother, since he is the only one still with us from that family. I also spoke to a lawyer about what to give and what not to give. As it turned out, the potential buyer was trying to pull enough information out of me to basically steal the story. Once I had my lawyer tell them that the information exists and has been verified, but they wouldn't receive it until a contract was in place, they bailed. For that reason, I am a little guarded about this information. That being said, I wrote this out in summary form. I skipped over several details in the process. One comment was critical of my friend being traumatized by a guy jerking off. That's not the case. He was traumatized by how close he was to being the victim. This is the same issue I have been struggling with. Another comment questioned why the guy just so happened to be in the forest. While I don't know for certain, my assumption was that he was following us before my friend spotted him. Also, this forest was actually an island of trees in the middle of a field. It was probably 200 meters diameter at the widest point. It separated the baseball and soccer fields. I am also appreciative of the advice about my mental health. I have been attending counseling for this and other crap that's happened in my life. Unfortunately, I have had a few bad situations that rivaled this one. I am doing really well and have managed to live a very happy and successful life. Married for 10 years now and a baby on the way. My struggles are minimal at this point and really are just infrequent night terrors. I can't imagine being a kid and going through that. That's real-life horror. This next story comes from Reddit, and if you know anything about skinwalkers, you're already not going to like where this is going. A teenage girl sneaks into the woods at 3 a.m., and something out there doesn't just watch her, it talks to her. And what she saw standing on two legs at the end, she still refuses to go into the woods ever again. It fucking spoke to me. I'm not one to post these kind of things. I mostly just have Reddit to look at bugs and read about roommate drama. But I had an experience in the woods one night almost 10 years ago that got brought up recently and thought I'd share here. I, 16 at the time, snuck out of the house to go smoke weed in Lynn M.A. Woods at about 3 a.m. It's not a huge sector of woods, just a wee reservation smack dab in the middle of the Boston suburbs surrounding the local reservoir. I got to the entrance of the trail, parked my car, and made my way to the campsites, about a 5-minute walk, where there were fire pits available. It was a popular smoking area for teenagers, and I was one of them. I set up to draw by the fire I had made and begin to roll a joint. As I was rolling, I had heard something on 4 legs come up from behind me. I didn't sweat it that much because where I'm from, the worst it could be was probably a coyote. But then you could hear it transition into 2 legs and walk with a bipedal gait. That confused me. Then everything went fucking silent. No crickets, no birds, nothing. The only thing I could hear at that point was the crackling of the fire and my own breathing. Then I became really concerned, like something bad was about to happen. I call out, thinking maybe it was just a homeless dude working up the courage to ask me for some food or some money, since it was the city after all. I say hello and ask if anyone's there. Silent still for about a minute. Everything's telling me to run, but I stay because I thought if it was an animal trying to hunt me, I should stand my ground and make myself appear I'm not worth the risk. Then whatever it was, it talked. It sounded almost like a parrot mimicking its owner's voice, and it asked to bum a light. "Can I bum a light?" it said. At first I'm relieved because at least I know it's not an animal, but the way it spoke was truly uncanny. I said, "Sure, but you have to come out where I can see you. You're giving me the creeps, dude." And then it asked again and again, 3 times. Then I was really freaked and knew something was really wrong. I then told it to fuck off and find someone else to ask if he was going to be creepy about it. Then it ran off on all 4s. You could hear all 4 feet hitting the ground as it ran away. The crickets came back, the night birds started to chirp again, and the air even felt warmer. That feeling of dread washed over me, and I knew I had to fucking book it. I calmly pack all my stuff back up, put out the fire, and make my way back down the trail to my car. I wanted to run, but part of me still believed it was just a dude trying to get creepy with a 16-year-old girl in the woods by herself. And if I played it cool and acted like I wasn't scared, maybe he'd back off. My mother always taught me to make a scene in that scenario, and I was prepared to knife whatever came at me. I also thought maybe if it was an animal, I wouldn't trigger its hunting instincts if I just walked instead of ran. But man, every hair on the back of my neck was standing up. That feeling of being watched is definitely real. I finally see my car about 200 feet ahead of me. I feel safe again, but I'm still on alert. I feel secure enough to look behind me, and sure enough, maybe 40 feet behind me is a male deer on its hind legs in the middle of the trail. I fucking freak. I've never heard of a skinwalker, never believed in anything like them at the time, never even knew what they were. But I knew something about that image was seriously wrong, and I lost my composure and booked it to my car. I made it back no problem and drove off before I could even turn my headlights on. To this day, I'm 24, about to turn 25. I have never been back to those woods, or really any woods for that matter. I'm deathly afraid of nature now, which sucks. The very idea of spending a night in them makes me so anxious I feel nauseous. It wasn't until years later when I fell into a YouTube rabbit hole in college, when you just pick one video suggested on your recommended page and let autoplay take you wherever, that I stumbled on a video that described skinwalkers and alleged experiences people have had with them in the woods, that I truly began to understand what I may have encountered that night. This shit is real. IDK if they're as aggressive or dangerous as people make them out to be in the stores I've seen online, because in my experience it seemed pretty curious and backed off when I confronted it, still thinking it was just a creepy dude looking to score. But to this day, thinking about it makes me shudder, and I get a put in my stomach. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. I'd love to have this debunked, even. I loved those woods, and sort of wanted to just have been a weird dude. But I've heard some weird, very similar stories from the locals about those woods, and now I don't know what to think. And those were the stories' unsettling little reminders that some things out there aren't just stories. If you felt a chill at any point, you're not alone, I did too. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay aware, and whatever you do, don't ignore the sounds you hear in the dark.